Chapter 1, In-cite, a look inside player development. I didn't become left-footed because I wanted to. I became left-footed because I had to. It started with my eyes, or more specifically, with the interruption of one. I had eye muscle surgery as a child, and for a period afterwards, I wore a patch over my dominant right eye. The logic was clinical. Strengthening the left forced the brain to use it. But what that did, without anyone quite realizing it, was scramble my entire perceptual system as a player. My sense of space, my balance, my relationship to the ball. The world tilted just slightly off axis, and suddenly, everything I knew about movement had to be recalibrated. At first, this felt like a hindrance. The patch made me uncomfortable. I hated the way the world looked through it, off-center and unstable. I couldn't read depth or timing in the same way. But in that visual disruption, something deeper was happening. Without conscious effort, I began using my left foot more. Not just for support, but to initiate, to feel, to solve. My right foot still had the power, but my left began to inherit the precision. The feedback loop changed direction. I wasn't switching feet. I was remapping the system. At the time, I had no language for what was happening. No one explained lateralization, hemispheric rebalancing, or motor cortex adaptation. I wasn't a neurologist. I was just a kid trying to kick a ball. But something shifted. My left foot, once reserved for balance, became a site of interaction. It was no longer passive. It began to make decisions. First it tapped, then it passed, then eventually became the foot I trusted in tight spaces under pressure, when clarity was needed. This wasn't just about learning to be ambidextrous. It wasn't about becoming symmetrical. In fact, it was the opposite. I was becoming asymmetrically fluent. I was developing a kind of embodied lateral intelligence, one foot stabilizing the other, expressing, and that system, born out of necessity, began to shape the way I saw the game entirely. The left foot brought something the right never did: spatial intimacy. It felt closer to the ground, closer to the moment, more sensitive to the changes in energy between me and the defender. I began to feel the defender's intentions not as patterns, but as pressure gradients. I could sense when to pass, not just by space, but by tone. The ball felt different. It wasn't just something to be struck. It was something to be understood. This wasn't just technique. This was perception. The left side was teaching me how to see differently. What I was learning, without being taught, was that the body's not fixed in dominance. That movement is not hard-coded into the hemisphere. That when the dominant pathway is blocked, another form of intelligence rises. Not out of nowhere, but out of the parts of us that don't usually speak up. The quiet side, the balancing side, the one that holds rhythm rather than force. Later in life, I came to understand this through the lens of neuroscience. I read about neuroplasticity, biohemispheric motor control, corpus callosum building, and the procedural memory that lives in repetition. I studied how athletes could remap their entire perceptual field by training the weaker side until it became the anchor. I learned that every moment of imbalance sends a signal to that nervous system, and that signal becomes the site of learning if the body doesn't panic and shut down. But long before I could name any of that, I lived it. I wasn't trying to become a better player. I was trying to stay in the game, to keep seeing, keep feeling, and keep moving. And in that effort, I stumbled into one of the deepest truths I know about performance. Real intelligence emerges not from dominance, but from distribution. The moment you take something away, the system has to reorient. And in that reorientation, new sight lines appear, new patterns of perception, new timing windows, new forms of empathy with your own body, with others on the field, with the rhythm of the moment. The left foot taught me not just to play from the other side. It taught me that the other side is where clarity often lives. So when I talk about in-c, about embodied perception, about movement that arises from the inner rhythm rather than outer command, it begins here. Not in theory, but in sensation. In the awkward first touches of a non-dominant limb, in the strange beauty of not being able to see clearly, in the slow recalibration of a system forced to feel its own way into new balance. I didn't choose to be left-footed. The game chose that for me. But in accepting the imbalance and learning to listen to it, I discovered something deeper. The balance Deeper than balance, I discovered fluency. As I continued to play, I began to realize that left-footedness wasn't just a personal adaptation. It was, in many ways, an entirely different sport. The geometry of the game changes when the dominant limb is the one that occupies the space most others ignore. If you break the field into quadrants, divided vertically by the touch lines and horizontally by the halfway line, the asymmetries become obvious. Most right-footed players operate within a fixed perimeter of control. They receive from the right, orient to the right, pass or drive to the right. When they're on the left side of the field, and in doing so, they often expose the ball, because the motion required to bring it across the body creates an opening, a tell, a vulnerability in the sequence. But for the left-footed player, especially the right-handed left-footed player, the angles are reversed, and the field opens in the directions most defenders are not trained to anticipate. On the left side, you don't have to show the ball. You can protect it naturally. You can turn away from the pressure without contorting your body. More than that, you can progress the ball without pause, because the touch comes from a side that lives behind the line of vision from most right-sided defenders. It's not just a technical advantage. It's a neuromechanical asymmetry. It feels different. It flows differently. And to those defending against it, it reads as unpredictable, not because it's fancy, because it doesn't follow the dominant patterns of the sport. Now imagine being able to transfer your dominant coordination, the fluency, the balance, the micro-timing you've developed with your right, onto your left. This doesn't mean simply using your weaker foot. It means treating it as a full expression of the dominant side's intelligence. When you reach this point, the field opens up not just in both directions, but in all directions at once. You're no longer limited by lane or bias. You're no longer a one lane player. You can operate with dominant fluency on your dominant side. You can operate with non-dominant fluency on your non-dominant side. And then, if needed, you can switch hemispheres in real time. I know something you do not. I am not left-handed. What this gives you isn't just flexibility. It gives you dimensionality. You begin to associate with technique and motions that are foreign to most right-footed players. Pivots, half spins, shimmies, changes of angle that don't track on a linear axis. Many naturally left-footed players, especially when right-handed, develop a kind of hybrid vocabulary, pivoting on the weaker side, reorienting their torso to find new exit routes, absorbing pressure at odd angles. They're improvisers not by style, but by constraint. And as a right-handed left-footed player, you begin to inherit that catalog. You begin using the left-footed tactics on the right side, mirroring the body shape using timing windows that feel spatially reversed to most defenders. And then at will, you switch back into right-sided orientation. It's a kind of cognitive code switching. But instead of changing language, you're changing body language, your movement vocabulary. Most right-footed players have a linear bias. This isn't just mechanical, it's cultural. They've been trained in a system that privileges right-sided coordination, offers it clarity, simplicity, and predictability. One touch, down the line, cut in, deliver. But when you are wrong-footed, playing with opposite-footed players, you have to develop technique to compensate that is foreign to the right-hand dominant defenders. You have to spin like Maradona on your left foot. But when you have access to both sides, when you learn to move through your asymmetry rather than around it, you're no longer playing the same game. You're playing a universal game built on switchability, responsiveness, and perception. You can draw pressure one way, then invert it the next. You can receive right, rotate left, and finish on either foot. You can shift tempo not just in movement, but in intention. This is the real advantage of left-footedness. Not simply the rarity of it, but the way it breaks the rhythm of dominant culture. The way it forces defenders, coaches, systems to confront an axis they're not built to control. And for those who came into it through disruption, through injury, through necessity, it gives us more than skill. It gives us a lens. That lens, the one that sees the game from multiple sides, in multiple tenses, with no fixed center. That's where In-cite begins, to move from awareness into tactical identity. And once that switch is built into the body, it doesn't go away. It becomes part of how you move, how you think, how you know what's about to happen, and how to meet it with the foot, the game doesn't expect.